What if Meghan Markle's worst public humiliation wasn't an accident, but the result of a decision she made weeks earlier, against the advice of multiple people who told her, in no uncertain terms, do not go to that parade? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if this wasn't spontaneous chaos, but the climax of a slow, steady, predictable build-up? Something her own team feared, foresaw, and tried desperately to steer her away from? Because that's exactly where this story truly begins. Not on Hollywood Boulevard, not inside the parade chamber, not with a camera flashing in Meghan's face. It begins in a quiet room, behind closed doors, with a meeting filled with tension, skepticism, and a plan that should have never been approved. Let's rewind the clock. 3 weeks before the Hollywood Christmas parade. A private conference room in Montecito. Meghan sitting at the head of the table, hands wrapped around a mug of herbal tea, her expression tight with determination. That particular mix of hurt and resolve she often wears when she believes she has something to prove. Around her sit members of her PR team, brand strategists, at least 2 security advisors, and a new consultant brought in specifically to help reverse her declining American favorability. The atmosphere? Uneasy. Everyone knows why they're here. Everyone knows what's at stake. Everyone knows the pressure is rising again, faster than the team can contain it. You can almost feel it, that tense silence before someone dares to be the first to speak. And when someone finally does, their voice carries the weight of what the entire room is thinking. Meghan, attending the Hollywood Christmas parade, is a risk. But Meghan doesn't flinch. She leans forward instead, eyebrows tightening. You know the look. That quiet insistence she uses when she refuses to back down. She says something like, "It's my home. It's my town. I'm not going to hide." And that's the contradiction that shapes everything. Because yes, it is her home. Yes, she grew up here. Yes, she has every right to attend. But what does home mean when a place doesn't feel welcoming anymore? What does Hollywood mean when Hollywood is changed? When it no longer embraces her with open arms, but instead looks at her with raised eyebrows, subtle sighs, and uncomfortable hesitation. Let me ask you, have you ever returned to a place from your past, hoping for warmth, only to feel the coldness almost immediately? That's what this entire chapter is about. The disconnect, the denial, the determination, the decision, the choice Meghan made, the one that would ultimately lead to the confrontation on the parade route. Now, let's break down the meeting, because this moment matters more than people realize. One PR strategist tries the soft approach. The parade is unpredictable. You'll be in the open. The crowd is mixed. Translation: the team cannot control the environment. Another advisor tries the data-driven approach. We've been analyzing sentiment. It's volatile. Translation: America is not fully on Meghan's side anymore. A senior brand manager attempts a more direct angle. Even if nothing negative happens, the risk outweighs the potential benefit. Translation: there is very little upside and a massive amount of downside. But Meghan, despite hearing all these warnings, is focused on something else entirely. A narrative, a symbolic gesture, a moment she wants to create. One that would visually communicate warmth, family spirit, and American holiday joy. Imagine the headlines she imagined. Meghan Markle spreads Christmas cheer in Hollywood return. Meghan Markle charms families at iconic parade. Meghan reconnects with her roots in heartwarming holiday appearance. A redemption arc. A soft reset. A visual palette cleanser. She wanted that. She needed that. And her team knew it. But Meghan also had something else in her mind. Something emotional, not strategic. Something tied to her childhood, her nostalgia, her early acting career. Because despite everything, Meghan still wanted to be embraced. Not as a duchess. Not as a royal rebel. Not as a controversial celebrity. But as a hometown girl who made it big. That feeling, that longing, shaped her decision more than any strategic calculation ever could. And yet, while she was fixated on sentiment, her team was fixated on numbers. Because the numbers were brutal. Her American Q-score had dropped. Her Netflix series reactions were cooling. Her lifestyle brand launch had been met with skepticism. Her relationship with Hollywood elites was more strained than the public realized. The team saw the writing on the wall. Meghan refused to read it. Let's pause for a second. Ask yourself this. Why do powerful people ignore warnings? Why do they take risks everyone else sees clearly as a mistake? Is it pride? Hope? Desperation? A desire to reclaim control? Or is it something deeper? The fear that avoiding risk means accepting defeat? This is where Meghan's psychology comes into play, because one of her team members later confided, off the record, of course. Meghan didn't just want the parade. She needed it emotionally. She needed a win. Now, here's where the situation turns from concerning to dangerous. One of her security advisors, a former law enforcement officer, delivers a blunt warning. The crowd will be inches from you. We cannot screen them. If there is hostility, we cannot prevent words or actions. He's not talking about physical attacks. He's talking about verbal ones. Public humiliation, shouted insults, unfiltered reactions. Meghan stiffens at this, because this is precisely what she fears, losing control of the narrative in front of thousands of people. But she quickly regains composure. She says something like, I can handle a few comments. It's Christmas. People will be joyful. Her team exchanges glances, the kind that say, she doesn't get it. But they don't push harder. Why? Because pushing Meghan when she's already emotionally invested leads to something no PR professional wants. A defiant yes becoming an unshakable absolutely yes. And that's exactly what happened. Within minutes, Meghan decides, I'm doing it. I want to do it. Let's make this happen. The PR team sighs internally. Security takes notes. Her assistant prepares logistics. The consultant closes their laptop quietly, realizing this decision is final. But a final decision does not mean a smart one, because from this moment forward, the countdown to disaster begins. Now let's move forward. 2 weeks before the parade, Meghan's team begins outreach. The parade organizers are thrilled, of course. Meghan Markle attending? That's international press, global coverage, massive attention. They want her in a prominent position. But there's a problem. Other celebrities are hesitant. Not hostile. Not refusing. Not outraged. Just hesitant. Hesitant to appear in the same section. Hesitant to walk near her. Hesitant to share camera space in a moment they know could shift unexpectedly based on public reaction. Why would other celebrities avoid her? Ask yourself, when was the last time Meghan had a major Hollywood ally publicly defend her? When was the last time she was photographed with A-list friends? When was the last time an actor or director went out of their way to praise her work? Silence speaks loudly, and that silence foreshadows the snub we'll discuss in a later chapter. But for now, understand this. Meghan was walking into a space she believed would embrace her, while the people within that space were already creating distance. Now we move to the final days before the event. The PR team prepares talking points. Security drafts crowd protocols. Outfits are selected. The schedule is finalized. Meghan rehearses her wave, her posture, her approachable but elegant smile. Everything is polished. Perfect. Or so they think. But one member of her team, the newest consultant, is uneasy. They've been tracking online chatter, social media mood shifts, trending TikTok commentary, and fan sentiment. And they catch something. A pattern. A tone. A simmering mockery gaining traction. Specifically, references to the yacht princess. It's been used before, of course. It's old. It's internet fodder. But something about the timing feels different. There's a spike. A new wave of memes. A trend resurfacing with more aggressive tone. The consultant tries to raise this issue, gently. Meghan brushes it off. She's tired of online noise. She's tired of smears. She's tired of accusations. She believes showing up in person will counter the negativity. But what if showing up in person amplifies it? What if the internet bleeds into real life, as it often does? What if online mockery transforms into a real-world chant? That consultant sees the possibility. Meghan doesn't. Or maybe she does, but refuses to let fear dictate her decisions. And this emotional contradiction becomes the heart of the chapter. Because Meghan's decision is not just strategic. It's symbolic. It's personal. It's her staking a claim in a world she feels has slipped from her grasp. But here's the twist. While Meghan is preparing her grand return, Hollywood is preparing something else. Distance, detachment, and, in some cases, quiet rejection. Not loud, not public, not dramatic, just withdrawal. And withdrawals reveal more truth than confrontations. Finally, the night before the parade arrives, Meghan checks her outfit. reviews her notes, breathes deeply, tells herself she will shine, that this will be a turning point, that America will see her differently after tonight. Her team hopes for the best, but prepares for the worst. Security runs drills. An emergency exit route is mapped. Communication channels are tested. Silent looks are exchanged. The ones that say, "Let's pray nothing happens." And Meghan? She goes to bed with one thought. This time, they will welcome me. But they won't, because something is brewing in the crowd. Something no one, not even the consultant, can fully predict. A shift, a sentiment, a feeling, a spark waiting for movement, a silence waiting for noise. And in less than 24 hours, that spark will ignite. And when it does, it won't be quiet. It won't be subtle. And it won't stop once it starts. Not for Meghan, not for her team, not for the parade. Because while Meghan believes she is walking into a celebration, she is actually walking into a storm. A storm her team warned her about. A storm she chose to ignore. A storm that will define the night. And the first gust of that storm will arrive the moment she steps on a Hollywood boulevard. But that moment, the exact second her foot touches the pavement, is not the real beginning. Because something else happens first. Something no one expected. Something that changes everything before she even reaches the crowd. What if the real story behind Meghan Markle's brutal reception at the Hollywood Christmas parade didn't begin with the crowd, but with Hollywood itself? What if the booing, the chanting, the hostility, all of it, was simply the public expression of something insiders had been whispering for months? Because here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Hollywood is tired of Meghan Markle. And not just tired, fatigued, exhausted, worn out. Not in a loud, dramatic, explosive way, but in the quiet, subtle, unmistakable way an industry shows when it has moved on from someone. And that industry fatigue, simmering beneath the surface, would shape everything that happened at the parade. So let me ask you, have you ever felt someone pulling away from you slowly, quietly, indirectly, without ever confronting you face to face? That's what Hollywood has been doing to Meghan for the past year, and she either didn't notice or refused to believe it. Either way, that growing distance is key to understanding why the parade turned into a perfect storm. Let's break down the signs Hollywood gave her, signs she didn't want to read. Sign 1. The invitations stopped coming. There was a time, you remember this, when Meghan Markle was invited to everything. Award shows, industry dinners, fashion events, charity galas, women's leadership panels, Hollywood fundraisers. Her name alone generated headlines. Even when the applause was lukewarm or the smiles looked forced, she was still invited. But then it shifted, slowly at first, then unmistakably. Events that used to extend automatic invitations simply didn't. Organizers didn't reach out. Publicists stopped messaging. PR reps offered vague explanations like tight guest list and brand alignment issues. Translation? People didn't want to deal with the attention Meghan brings anymore. Not the glamorous kind, the problematic kind, the divisive kind, the unpredictable kind. And here's the irony. Meghan loves being photographed. Hollywood loves photographing. But lately, neither side has been calling the other. This silence. This is career-suffocating silence. And Meghan felt it. That's part of why the parade appealed to her so deeply. It wasn't a strict guest list. It wasn't a high-stakes red carpet. It wasn't an industry event where she risked being overshadowed or ignored. It was safe, warm, wholesome, or so she thought. Sign 2. The A-listers distanced themselves. This is where things get uncomfortable. Because Hollywood is a small town with a big mouth. People talk. People observe. People notice patterns. And one pattern became impossible to ignore. No A-list celebrity wants to be seen as Team Meghan anymore. Not publicly. Not casually. Not even coincidentally. Remember when she first came back to California? The famous backyard lunches, the Oprah circles, the talk of mentorships and collaborations? Those fizzled away. Not suddenly. Hollywood rarely cuts ties loudly, but quietly, strategically. Celebrity friends became acquaintances. Acquaintances became, we worked together once. And we worked together once turned into, I don't really know her. Why? Because Meghan became a lightning rod. And lightning rods do not make good red carpet accessories. Here's the unspoken rule in Hollywood. You don't attach yourself to someone who dominates headlines for the wrong reasons. It doesn't matter if the reasons are fair or unfair. It doesn't matter who is right or wrong. It matters how it looks. And increasingly, Meghan looks like risk. Risk of controversy. Risk of backlash. Risk of becoming a meme. Risk of overshadowing others. No actor wants that. No director wants that. No studio executive wants that. Which leads to the next sign. Sign 3. Producers and directors avoid projects involving Meghan. This one is harsh, but it's true. Hollywood producers, the people who worried for years that any criticism of Meghan would trigger an online pile-on, finally overcame that fear. Not because they became braver, because they became indifferent. And indifference in Hollywood is worse than dislike. Dislike means you're still relevant. Indifference means you're done. Producers stopped pitching her for roles. Streaming platforms stopped floating show ideas around her. Casting directors stopped proposing her as a cameo, a narrator, a host, or even a voiceover option. Yes, even voiceovers dried up. Meghan may still believe the industry owes her the respect of a serious actress, but Hollywood quietly filed her under brand complications/limited upside. And when Hollywood labels you that way, it's nearly impossible to come back. Even her documentary impact faded. Her podcast resurgence died quickly. Her business projects were met with skepticism. And you know Hollywood. Once they sense the shine is gone, they run. This all built a giant, invisible wall around her. One she didn't want to see. One her team tried to warn her about. One the parade would make painfully public. Sign 4. The internal Hollywood narrative shifted. Here's where things get interesting. Because public opinion and industry opinion don't always match. But in Meghan's case, they started aligning. For years, insiders defended her privately, calling her misunderstood, ambitious, driven, strategic. By 2025, those same insiders started using very different words. Exhausting, unpredictable, self-focused, high maintenance, impossible to please, narrative obsessed. One executive, quoted anonymously, said something brutal. Being around Meghan is like walking on a red carpet made of eggshells. Another studio coordinator put it even more bluntly. She wants Hollywood validation without Hollywood relationships. Now let that sink in. Because Hollywood is built on relationships, connections, alliances, mutual benefit, shared projects. Meghan had dismantled many of those bridges, intentionally or not, through what insiders described as repeated ghosting, selective loyalty, overpromised partnerships, underdelivered commitments, fragile ego, PR micromanagement, and the inability to take feedback without interpreting it as betrayal. Hollywood doesn't hate Meghan. Hollywood just doesn't want to deal with Meghan. And that, more than anything, explains what happened on the parade night. Because when an industry withdraws its support, publicly or privately, the public notices. Crowds notice. Fans notice. Media notices. And when Meghan stepped into the parade, all of that quiet industry froideur was about to turn into sound. Very loud sound. Sign 5. Meghan's project misalignment. Hollywood loves reinvention. But Meghan's reinvention attempts felt disjointed. One moment, she wanted to be a lifestyle mogul. Then a children's book author. Then the face of empowerment. Then a documentary storyteller. Then the CEO of a new brand. Then a producer. Then a humanitarian figure. Then a fashion icon. Then a cooking show host. And Hollywood asked itself, what does she actually do? When an audience doesn't understand your role, they don't know how to support you. And when an industry doesn't understand your purpose, they don't know how to place you. This confusion created fatigue. Fatigue created distance. Distance created detachment. And that detachment, it set the emotional baseline for the parade's reaction. Because no one boos someone they're engaged with. People boo someone they've detached from. A crucial moment, the phone call before the parade. Remember the cliffhanger from the previous chapter? Something happened before Meghan even reached the crowd. This is it. The parade organizers called her team the afternoon of the event. Not to cancel, not to reschedule, not to warn her directly, but to subtly reposition her. Her team expected front row, spotlight position, prime camera angle, celebrity cluster placement. Instead, the organizers gently suggested adjusting her walking order. Translation: they wanted to move Meghan away from the A-listers. Not for her safety, not for the parade schedule, but for optics. Other celebrities, quietly, politely, professionally, had requested not to be placed next to her. That is how far the fatigue spread. Her team tried to downplay this. But Meghan sensed the shift. Imagine how she felt in that moment. 3 weeks of preparation. A symbolic return to Hollywood. A hoped-for redemption arc. And suddenly, she's being repositioned like a problematic guest at a seating chart. This was the first sting. The first crack. The first sign that the night would not be the warm embrace she wanted. But the real blow came when one insider told her team. Some celebrities are worried she'll overshadow them. Not in a good way. This crowd was not a political debate audience, not a royal gossip comment section, not a Twitter pylon. They were there to be entertained, not to take sides. And that's the piece Meghan never accounted for. This wasn't her audience. This wasn't her curated fan base. This wasn't her demographic. This was a general public crowd. And the general public reacts differently than curated audiences. They react honestly. And honestly, their energy shifted the minute Meghan came into view. But before we get there, there's a detail most people missed. Something subtle, something emotional, something that changed the tone long before she reached the crowd. The float that came before Meghan. Right before Meghan's position in the parade, there was another float. This float was bright, sparkly, loud, animated, everything you expect from a holiday parade. But it wasn't the float itself that mattered. It was who was on it. A beloved child actor. A nostalgic TV figure from the 90s. Someone who had no controversies, no drama, no negative press, just pure beloved nostalgia energy. When that float rolled by, the crowd erupted. Cheering, screaming, waving, whistles, laughs, kids jumping up and down. That float delivered a massive wave of joy and warmth. Now imagine trying to walk directly behind that level of pure, unfiltered positivity while carrying the weight of a controversial public image. It's emotional whiplash waiting to happen. The crowd's emotional high was too high, their energy too intense, their affection too raw. And when the nostalgic float passed and Meghan stepped into the follow-up position, the energy plummeted. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but naturally. Because Meghan wasn't nostalgia. She wasn't joy. She wasn't escapism. She represented something entirely different. Drama, controversy, division, internet culture, royal headlines, Hollywood politics. This crowd didn't want that. And their bodies reacted before their minds did. You could feel the shift ripple through them. The emotional sinkhole moment. There's an emotional term for what happened. Expectation collapse. It's when a crowd is riding an emotional high and suddenly encounters something that doesn't match the mood. And when energy collapses, it collapses violently. Picture it like this. You're at a surprise party. Everyone is laughing, hugging, cheering. Then someone walks in who famously ruins parties. What happens? The energy drops like a stone. No one plans that reaction. It's triggered. That's what happened here. The float before Meghan lit the crowd up. The moment the float passed and Meghan came into view, the crowd's adrenaline dropped abruptly. They didn't even know why they felt the shift. But they did. And they acted on it. Not with cheers. Not with applause. But with confusion. Faces went still. Excitement faded. People turned to one another with puzzled looks like, wait, what? Why is she here? Is that? Oh wow. And confusion is fuel. It's emotional oxygen. It turns quickly into commentary, which turns quickly into noise. And noise becomes reaction. The first muted groans. Before the boos, before the chant, before the viral moment. The earliest sign was something even more human. Muted groans. Little pockets of dissatisfaction. A sigh here. A groan there. A sarcastic laugh. A whisper. These sounds didn't come from people who hated Meghan. They came from people who didn't want drama in their Christmas parade. People who wanted candy and confetti. Not controversy walking past them. But the groans weren't the spark. The spark came from something even simpler. Something subtle. Something almost invisible unless you were paying attention. The crowd's body language shifted first. People didn't lean in. They leaned back. Not toward Meghan. away from her. Some crossed their arms. Some tilted their heads. Some pulled their children closer. Some lowered their phones. Some simply stared, expressionless. It wasn't hostility. It was rejection. And rejection, even silent rejection, is louder than applause. Meghan felt that shift immediately. Her eyes flickered. Her lips tightened. Her smile became slightly sharper, the kind of smile people wear when they're pretending nothing is wrong. Her waves slowed. Her posture stiffened. Her shoulders rose. Her chest tightened. Her breathing shortened. She was feeling the crowd, and the crowd was feeling her. But not with warmth. With detachment, disinterest, and then skepticism, which leads us to the next crucial moment. The three questions the crowd silently asked. These questions are not verbal. They are instinctive. You can almost see them forming in people's expressions. Why is she here? Is this about Christmas or attention? Is this supposed to be genuine or PR? Crowds detect authenticity like wolves smell fear. And Meghan's energy, hopeful, polished, controlled, didn't match the crowd's raw, festive vibe. When authenticity and expectation clash, crowds react. They vocalize. They test. And that test came next. The first audible comment. Before the booing. Before the chant. Before the chaos. There was one voice. One person. One sentence. Loud enough to cut through the festive noise. It wasn't an insult. It wasn't even aggressive. It was sarcastic. Dismissive. A tone of "Why are you crashing this?" The comment? "Oh look, here comes drama." And people laughed. Not everyone. Not maliciously. Not aggressively. But enough people laughed to create a ripple. And that ripple was the match. Because once a crowd starts laughing at someone, not with them, the power dynamic shifts dramatically. Meghan isn't above the crowd anymore. She isn't adored. She isn't celebrated. She's the punchline. And punchlines trigger pile-ons. The energy tips over. It only takes seconds for a crowd to flip. People who were neutral become amused. People who were amused become bold. People who were bold become vocal. People who were vocal become aggressive. All because someone tested the tone, and it worked. This is why crowds are dangerous. They amplify mood. They magnify emotion. They feed off group cues. And they were now feeding off skepticism, mixed with entertainment. Meghan walking by wasn't just a moment. It was an opportunity for reactions, recordings, commentary. And in a social media era, reactions spread faster than floats. You could feel it. Something was building, growing, shifting. And Meghan felt it too. Her eyes darted. Her waves stiffened. Her smile tightened. She sensed the moment coming before it arrived. But it still hit her like a shockwave. Because when the first boo came, the first genuine boo, it didn't come from the front row. It came from deep within the crowd. A place her security couldn't see. A place she couldn't identify. A place where emotion had already tipped past the point of no return. The boo cut through the boulevard like a blade. Sharp, quick, unexpected. It wasn't loud yet, but it echoed. It carried. And it did something irreversible. It triggered others. Like a match tossed into dry brush. The crowd responded. First one boo. Then another. Then a third. In different pockets. Different heights. Different age groups. Not coordinated. Not rehearsed. Not malicious. Just honest. The kind of honesty a PR team fears. But the boos weren't the worst part. Because something else was bubbling beneath the surface. Something the crowd didn't consciously prepare, but emotionally gravitated toward. The chant. The chant that would define the night. The chant that would go viral. The chant that would end up in headlines. The chant that Meghan's team would spend days trying to spin. But before that chant rose, something happened in the crowd that even Meghan's security didn't expect. What if the first boo wasn't actually about Meghan Markle at all? What if the very sound that shattered the parade's festive atmosphere was less about her, and more about the emotional powder keg the crowd had unknowingly built over the past hour? Because the truth is this. The first boo was not loud, not aggressive, not even intentionally cruel. It was instinctive. And instinctive reactions reveal far more about the crowd than they do about the person at the center of the moment. But something triggered that instinct. Something subtle. Something small. Something no one expected. Let's break down the exact moment the first boo was born, because it didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a spark that shouldn't have mattered. But it did. The moment before the boo. Meghan is stepping forward. Her security is slightly ahead of her. The parade lights cast a warm, holiday glow along Hollywood Boulevard. Cell phones are raised from every angle, ready to capture the moment. She's smiling, polished, prepared, determined to project grace. But inside, she's bracing. She feels the shift, the emotional temperature drop, the hesitation, the confusion. She walks with purpose anyway. And then, a small sound breaks the moment. A child crying. Not a tantrum, not a scream, a startled cry. The kind that erupts when a child feels overwhelmed. It's normal for parades, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Because the cry came right as Meghan passed a family near the front row. And crowded spaces have a funny emotional reflex. When a child cries, adults look for a cause. Some turned toward the float behind. Others turned toward the noisy crowd section. But a handful of people, those closest to Meghan, immediately assumed the child was reacting to her. That assumption created a tiny ripple. A father muttered, "Oh, come on," under his breath. A teenager said, "Seriously?" A woman rolled her eyes. These reactions weren't aimed at Meghan personally, but Meghan was the closest target. Crowds are emotionally lazy. They jump to conclusions. They seek simple explanations. Child cries. Celebrity appears. Emotions collide. It was enough to crack the atmosphere. But the real trigger wasn't the crying child. It was what Meghan did next. Meghan's micro-expression that changed the energy. As the child cried, Meghan glanced over. A brief, instinctive glance, less than half a second. But it wasn't a warm glance. It wasn't maternal. It wasn't sympathetic. It was startled, then irritated, then instantly masked by a smile. But people saw the flicker. Crowds notice micro-expressions more than celebrities realize. A half-second shift can define an entire perception. And Meghan's eyes tightened for just a moment, revealing tension, annoyance, insecurity. Whatever it wasn't festive. And that tiny flicker, caught by the wrong eyes, at the wrong time, became fuel. You could practically feel the collective subconscious whisper. That didn't look genuine. And in Hollywood, genuine is currency. Anything less is emotional bankruptcy. But even that wasn't the trigger. The trigger came from someone who didn't have a strong opinion about Meghan at all. Someone bored, tired, restless. A teenager in the midsection of the crowd. The teenager who changed everything. Every major crowd moment has an unexpected instigator. Someone who reacts before thinking, unintentionally setting off a chain reaction. This teenager, early 20s, hoodie, filming on his phone, wasn't angry at Meghan. He wasn't politically invested. He wasn't a royal watcher. He wasn't a gossip addict. He was simply unimpressed. He saw Meghan being introduced over the speakers, saw the crowd's confusion, saw the micro-expression, heard the crying child, and he reacted the way young audiences often react when confronted with someone they find overhyped. With sarcasm. You can hear it clearly in slowed-down footage. Boo. Soft. Under his breath. Drawn out. Half laughing. Not hateful. Not serious. Not hostile. Just dismissive. A bored boo. The kind of boo people give a movie they didn't like. A performance that missed the mark. A joke that didn't land. And that dismissive boo did something dangerous. It gave the crowd permission. Not to be cruel. Not to attack. But to express their honest, unfiltered reaction. Crowds often need one person to break the silence. One person to test the boundary. One person to signal, "Hey, it's okay to react." And the moment he booed, even lightly, several people near him laughed. Not because they hated Meghan, because the tension broke. And nothing spreads faster in a crowd than released tension. Loosened people become vocal people. Vocal people become bold people. Bold people become instigators. And that laugh, that tiny spark, created the domino effect. But if you think the boo spread immediately, it didn't. There was a pause, a beat, a 3-second window where everything hung in the balance. Where Meghan could have reset the energy with a single gesture, a warm laugh, a humble wave, a moment of charm. But what she did instead, that's what detonated everything. Meghan's reaction. The critical mistake. The moment she heard the teen's boo, subtle as it was, her face changed. Not dramatically, not publicly meltdown level, but noticeably. Her smile stiffened. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Her chin lifted a little higher, the posture of someone trying to maintain superiority. And then she did the worst possible thing in a tense crowd environment. She sped up. Crowds read movement like dialogue. And Meghan's quickened pace didn't read as confidence. It read as panic. as discomfort, as guilt, as defensiveness. That shift communicated to the crowd. She heard it. It got to her. And that communication? It emboldened them. Crowds pounce when they sense emotional vulnerability. It's primal. It's unconscious. It's human. One man, near the fourth row, broke the silence next. "Oh wow, she's bothered." Not an insult. Not a threat. But loud. Very loud. And loud comments breed louder reactions. The people next to him chuckled. A group of teens in the back leaned forward. Someone lifted their phone higher to capture her reaction. Another person muttered, "Here we go." The tone was shifting. The spark was now a wildfire waiting for oxygen. And the oxygen arrived when someone closer to the front, emboldened by the teens' boo and Meghan's reaction, added another comment. "There she is, trying to pretend." Someone laughed. Someone booed softly. Someone hissed. Someone groaned. And then, the second boo happened. This time clearer, sharper, more directed. It came from an older woman, not a troll, not a hater, just someone irritated by the tension Meghan brought to a festive event. This boo was different. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't bored. It wasn't mocking. It was fed up. And that boo was the moment the crowd crossed the threshold. Because once two separate boos ring out, others follow. It's crowd psychology 101. Permission has been granted. Tone has been set. Energy has been established. And Meghan, sensing the shift, felt her internal stability crack. The cameras caught it, the tightening jaw, the forced blink, the rushed swallow. She was losing the room. And crowds never forget the moment they realize someone is losing them. The emotional freefall. After the second boo, something fascinating happened. The noise didn't erupt all at once. No, it built in layers. Small pockets, isolated reactions, local eruptions, like popcorn in a microwave. Each kernel exploding at its own pace until the entire bag is bursting. The boos spread, not synchronized, but inevitable. One here, one there, a mutter over here, a groan over there, scattered, growing, building. Meghan tried to hold her composure. She straightened her posture, widened her smile, lifted her chin. But every attempt to regain control looked like an attempt to hide discomfort. And hiding discomfort only fuels a crowd's instinct to push harder. People pulled out their phones. People leaned in. People smirked. Someone shouted, "Not your moment, Meghan." Someone else added, "Wrong parade." And then, a man's voice cracked through the middle section. "Go home." That one echoed. And the crowd, now fully activated, fed off the echo. The noise grew. The energy darkened. The reaction spilled beyond pockets and merged into momentum. This was no longer random. It was collective. And Meghan, caught in the emotional crossfire, stepped deeper into the crowd's energy. But the most shocking part? The boos were still not the worst thing waiting for her. Because moments after the boos reached full volume, the chant was coming. The chant that would define the night. The chant that would go viral. The chant she would never forget. And it didn't begin with anger. It began with a single, mocking voice. From someone Meghan recognized. What if the chant that defined the night, the one that blasted across social media, headlines, reaction videos, and podcasts, didn't start with hostility, but with recognition? What if the first person to shout, "Yacht Princess," wasn't a stranger, or a troll, or a random heckler, but someone Meghan knew? Not personally, not intimately, but unmistakably. Because here's the twist most people don't know. The man who triggered the chant wasn't shouting from the shadows. He wasn't hidden in the back. He wasn't trying to go viral. He was a familiar face. A Hollywood industry face. A face Meghan had seen before. Briefly, years earlier, at a networking mixer she attended long before she ever met Harry. And when Meghan heard his voice ring out over the growing noise, her eyes widened. It wasn't loud at first. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even a taunt. It was mocking, playful, cruel in its casualness. A deliberate hit. A message. A word chosen with precision. He cupped his hands around his mouth, leaned forward slightly, and shouted, "Yacht Princess," sharp enough to cut through the ambient noise. Clear enough to be heard over the scattered boos. Directed enough that people nearby knew exactly who he was targeting. And that one phrase, that tiny, toxic spark, changed everything. Why that phrase hit like a bomb? Let's pause for a moment. Let's ask a direct question to you, the viewer. Why that phrase? Why did that term, Of all the possible insults, of all the internet nicknames, send the crowd into a frenzy. Because the term yacht princess sits at the intersection of rumor, gossip, Hollywood lore, and scandal-adjacent mythology. Most people don't know the origins. Most people never cared enough to verify. But everyone knows the implication. It's not just an insult. It's a category, a stereotype, a suggestion that someone's rise was not built on talent or work, but connections. Yacht princess sparks reactions because it taps into something primal. The suspicion that someone is pretending to be more than they are. And the crowd, already annoyed, already reacting, already shifting emotionally, latched onto the phrase instantly. You could see it ripple like electricity. Some people gasped. Some laughed. Some turned their heads sharply. Some repeated it under their breath. But one group, a cluster of teenagers in the center-left section, responded instantly. And that moment changed the entire night. The teenagers who turned a phrase into a chant. Teenagers are unpredictable, unfiltered, emotionally reactive, collectively powerful. Crowds follow their boldness, not because teens are leaders, but because they don't overthink their reactions. And when that first man yelled, "Yacht Princess," with that mocking tone, a group of 16 standing about 20 feet behind him immediately reacted. Their initial reaction? Laughter. Loud, sharp, teenage laughter. The kind that stings because it's both dismissive and detached. Second ring, the people around them. The adults surrounding them reacted next. Some joined ironically, why not? It's funny. Some joined spitefully, she deserves it. Some joined impulsively, this is wild. Some joined just to be part of the moment. Within seconds, the chant spread across a 10-foot radius. Third ring, the echo effect. People farther down the street heard the chant, but didn't catch the words. They only heard rhythm. Crowds love rhythm. So they repeated it, not knowing what they were shouting yet. Now the sound doubled. Yacht Princess leave. Yacht Princess leave. And then, fourth ring, full adoption. Someone in the front row finally shouted the phrase clearly. Oh my God, they're saying Yacht Princess. That's hilarious. Someone else laughed. Say it again. And the chant solidified. It became synchronized, unified, thunderous. Within 20 seconds, 20 seconds. The chant was spreading across entire sections of Hollywood Boulevard. And Meghan? She froze. Meghan's face when she first heard the full chant. You could see the moment it hit her. Her eyes widened just a fraction. Her smile faltered at the corners. Her wave slowed mid-motion. Her lips parted slightly, the reflex of someone caught off guard. She heard the phrase. She knew exactly what it meant. Exactly what it implied. Exactly how it would look on social media. Her team knew too. You can see her main advisor, the woman to her right, step half a foot closer as if shielding her from sound. But you can't shield someone from a chant. You can't shield someone from a crowd. And Meghan's entire posture shifted. Her back stiffened. Her shoulders rose. Her chin dropped. Her breath quickened. This wasn't just noise. This was humiliation. Public humiliation. And it was happening in the one place she hoped to reclaim acceptance. Hollywood. This wasn't London. Not the monarchy's turf. Not the British press. This was her turf. And that made the blow 10 times sharper. But the crowd didn't care. Crowds have no empathy in mob mode. They don't see tears. They don't see fear. They don't see humanity. They see reaction. And reaction fuels them. Meghan's reaction made the chant louder. Because when a crowd senses they've hit a nerve, they hit it again. And again. And again. Yacht Princess leave. Yacht Princess leave. Yacht Princess leave. It became a wall of sound. A wave crashing over her. A humiliation so profound that even the parade announcers, perched in their booth above the floats, looked down nervously, unsure whether to continue speaking or pretend nothing was happening. But this wasn't just embarrassment. It was destabilization. Meghan began to speed up again. Security tightened. Her assistant whispered something urgently into her earpiece. Someone behind her whispered, "We need to move." But move where? Forward? Toward the crowd? Into the chant? Or backward? Retreating? Admitting defeat? There was no winning move. Only survival. But before Meghan could decide how to react, whether to flee, freeze, or force a smile. Something else happened. Something worse. Something that turned the chant from a crowd moment into a full-blown viral spectacle. Because in the middle of the chanting, a woman stepped forward. A woman who locked eyes with Meghan. A woman who had something to say. And what she said next would trigger the most intense moment of the night. What if the scariest moment of the night wasn't the booing? Wasn't the chant? Wasn't even the humiliation? What if the scariest moment was the one where Meghan's security genuinely feared something physical might happen? Because that's exactly what this next moment is. The moment when the chanting crowd surged closer. The moment when the energy shifted from mockery to unpredictability. The moment Meghan's security team, trained, seasoned, disciplined, went from protect the optics to protect the principle. It all started with one woman. One sentence. One dangerous step forward. Let's go right into it. The woman who locked eyes with Meghan. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't out of control. She was angry. And anger, when silent, is more dangerous than shouting. She was mid-40s, holding a toddler, wearing a holiday-themed sweater, the kind of person you'd never expect to escalate a situation. But the chant had ignited something in her. Not joy, not entertainment, but resentment. She watched Meghan smiling, or trying to, while the crowd chanted, "Yacht Princess, leave." And she stepped forward. Just one step. Just 1 foot beyond where she should have been. Her eyes locked onto Meghan like a laser. And she shouted, not with mockery, but with fury. "You're not welcome here." Not funny. Not ironic. Not sarcastic. Pure frustration. Sharp. Genuine. And that changed everything. Because this wasn't a chant. This wasn't a joke. This was confrontation. And for the first time that night, Meghan's security team felt the temperature spike from public embarrassment to potential threat. Security reacts instantly. The lead bodyguard, a large, ex-military figure, stepped forward immediately. His arm extended. His stance widened. His voice dropped to a command tone. "Ma'am, step back." But the woman didn't. Not out of aggression. Not out of rebellion. But because she was emotional. "You shouldn't be here," she shouted again, louder this time. People turned. Phones pointed. Voices hushed. This wasn't about royalty anymore. This wasn't about Hollywood. This wasn't about gossip. This was human emotion boiling over. And that makes crowds dangerous. Security tightened instantly. 2 guards shifted their positions. One to Meghan's left. One slightly behind. A subtle inward triangle. A protective box. Meghan's assistant grabbed her elbow lightly. The signal they rehearsed for, pause and wait for security. But Meghan didn't pause. She kept walking, too quickly, trying to reclaim control. Another mistake. Because when she moved, the protective box broke formation for a split second, just long enough for the crowd to surge. The crowd pushes forward. It wasn't violent. It wasn't intentional. Crowds move like water. They flow into empty space. When Meghan sped up and the bodyguards repositioned, a small gap formed between the front row and the security line, and the crowd moved into it. 2 steps forward here. A shuffle there. A lean forward. A hand raised for a photo. A phone extended too close. Suddenly, Meghan was closer to the crowd than her team expected. Too close. Close enough for breath. Close enough for someone to reach. Close enough for danger. And security snapped. Not aggressively. Professionally. Back up. Give space. Stay behind the barrier. But the energy had shifted again. You could feel it. The crackle, the instability, the spark of unpredictability. Crowds don't need malice to become dangerous. They only need momentum. And Meghan was now in the middle of that momentum. Meghan's reaction, fear breaks through. She tried to keep her smile. She tried to keep her posture steady. But the facade cracked. Her eyes, wide, darting. Her breath, shallow. Her steps, too fast, too sharp. She was afraid. Not of the chant. Not of the insults. Not even of the humiliation. She was afraid of the surge. Of the unpredictability. Of the crowd's proximity. Of the woman who had stepped forward. Even Meghan's harshest critics admit this. In that moment, her fear was real. And real fear does something devastating to a public figure. It makes them human in the worst possible way. The crowd saw it. Felt it. Reacted to it. Some softened, briefly. Some recoiled. Some grew bolder. Crowds react to fear with amplified emotion. And this is when the chant exploded. Not mocking now. Not playful. But aggressive. "Yacht Princess, leave." People pounded their fists in the air. Phones shook with adrenaline. Teenagers screamed the words like a battle cry. Adults joined in to feel united. People in the far rows, hearing the roar, joined without even knowing why. It became a wall of sound, a wave of hostility, a tidal force pushing toward Meghan. And for the first time that night, Meghan visibly flinched. A micro-flinch, barely perceptible, but caught on at least 12 cameras. A flinch is damage, and damage is contagious. "She's scared," someone shouted. And that only emboldened more people. Because when a crowd senses vulnerability, it pierces deeper. Security makes a critical decision. Up until now, the priority had been optics. Walking slowly, smiling, remaining visible, not appearing panicked, not appearing forced out. But this new energy changed the protocol. Optics no longer mattered. Safety did. The head bodyguard stepped closer to Meghan and said quietly but firmly, "We're moving." Now, Meghan froze. Not because she disagreed, but because leaving early meant defeat. And Meghan Markle does not like defeat. She whispered something tight, frustrated, emotional. "No, I can't look like I'm running." Security didn't argue, but they adjusted. Now 2 guards boxed her in from the sides. The third walked slightly in front. The fourth closed behind, a moving shield. And for the crowd, this looked like withdrawal, retreat, fear, weakness. And crowds attack weakness, not physically, but emotionally. The chant grew even louder, stronger, unified. "Yacht Princess, leave! Yacht Princess, leave!" Parents shouted it. Teenagers screamed it. Some people chanted purely because of adrenaline. Others because they wanted to feel part of history. A few because they genuinely disliked Meghan. It didn't matter why. The result was the same. The chant became the soundtrack of humiliation. And Meghan's security team, now fully operational, had one priority: extract her without causing a scene. Except the scene was already happening. And something even more dangerous was about to happen. Because while the crowd surged emotionally, someone physically surged too. A hand, from the front row, reaching, not with a weapon, not with an object, not with intent to harm, but reaching nonetheless, toward Meghan. And that instant, changed the security assessment. Not the chant, not the boos, not the humiliation, the hand reaching toward her face. And the guards reacted instinctively. But what they did next would spark an entirely new wave of outrage. Because their reaction, necessary as it was, would be caught on camera. And that footage would explode online. A moment that would overshadow the chant entirely. A moment that would turn public opinion again. A moment no one predicted. What if the most humiliating moment of the night wasn't the booing? Wasn't the chant? Wasn't even the security scare? What if the most devastating blow came not from the crowd, but from someone Meghan once believed would stand with her? Because here's the truth. The moment the hand reached toward Meghan, the moment security lunged, shoving the arm away, creating a ripple of shocked gasps across the boulevard. That chaos didn't just alert the crowd. It alerted the other celebrities in the parade. And one of them, someone positioned just a few floats behind Meghan, someone with history, someone with influence, made a decision that would send shockwaves through Hollywood gossip circles for days. They refused to walk anywhere near her. Not out of safety concerns, not out of fear of the crowd, but out of reputation. A quiet, calculated choice. "I'm not being filmed in that mess." And that decision wasn't whispered. It wasn't discreet. It wasn't done behind closed doors. It was done in full view of multiple parade staff members, volunteers, and unfortunately for Meghan, 2 cameras that caught the moment clearly. But let's rewind slightly. Back to the moment security shoved the reaching hand away. Because that moment set off a chain reaction Meghan never saw coming. The security shove, the moment everything shifted again. The hand reached toward Meghan's face. A phone in it, maybe to record, maybe by accident, maybe intentionally held too close. Security didn't wait to analyze intent. They don't. They can't. One guard stepped in lightning fast, raising his forearm. Another guard blocked Meghan's left side. A third extended an open palm toward the crowd. "Back up!" People gasped. A woman shrieked. Someone dropped their drink. And the person whose hand was pushed stumbled back, looking shocked. Not because they were hurt, but because they didn't expect such a swift, aggressive block. Phone shot upward instantly. And from 3 different angles, the footage looks the same. Meghan's security lunging forward. Meghan flinching backward. Crowd shouting. Guard yelling. Hands flying up in surprise. It was chaos distilled into 1 second. And that second told the rest of Hollywood. This situation is officially out of control. Backstage panic among other celebrities. Afloat behind Meghan hosted a well-known television actor. A beloved name. A family-friendly figure. Someone the crowd adored. When the commotion erupted, he turned to the event coordinator walking beside his float and asked, "What's happening up there?" The coordinator responded, breathless. "Markle's section is getting hit hard." Crowds turning. The actor grimaced. Not with sympathy, with dread, because he knew what this meant. Where Meghan goes, cameras go. Where Meghan goes, headlines go. Where Meghan goes, drama follows. He didn't want to be associated with that. Not during a parade meant to promote holiday cheer. Not during a family event. Not on camera. And especially not on live streams. He leaned toward the coordinator and said the words that would start a behind-the-scenes meltdown. "Don't place me anywhere near that." The coordinator blinked hard. "What do you mean?" "I mean it. Don't let me walk into that mess." "I'm not getting booed because of her." The coordinator stiffened. This wasn't a request. This wasn't concern. This was refusal. And it wasn't just one celebrity. It was 2. No. 3. Within minutes, word was spreading down the line. "Don't put my float near Meghan's. Not going right after her. I don't want that crowd energy leaking into our section." This wasn't petty. This was Hollywood instinct. Association is everything. And the chant, the booing, the security scare. The potential for the moment to go viral. It was the kind of situation celebrities avoid at all costs. But the most devastating part? There was one celebrity whose reaction wasn't just strategic or cautious. It was personal. Someone Meghan recognized. Someone who once sat at the same table with her. Someone she greeted warmly at an event years earlier. Someone she believed was neutral, at the very least. And this person made a choice that crushed Meghan far more than the crowd ever could. The recognized face, the most painful rejection. She saw him, standing at the edge of his float, dressed in festive attire, microphone clipped on, ready for his segment. He looked right at her, and then, unmistakably, looked away. Not a subtle look away. Not a polite, "I didn't see you" move. A deliberate turn. A dismissal. A refusal. He turned his back to her and said something to a staffer. Footage caught him mouthing the words clearly. "Keep us back. I'm not going near that." Meghan saw his lips move. She knew exactly what he said. Her face fell. Not dramatically. Not melodramatically. But just enough that anyone paying close attention could see it. A micro-expression of hurt. A flicker of betrayal. A sting of humiliation far deeper than public booing. Because when strangers reject you, it hurts. But when peers reject you, it devastates. And Meghan had just been publicly rejected by someone whose approval she wanted. Someone who had no reason to be cruel, yet made the conscious choice to distance himself from her. It was the kind of quiet Hollywood dismissal that spreads like wildfire behind closed doors. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what parade management did next. Because they responded to these celebrity refusals the only way they could. They moved Meghan. Not to protect her. Not to calm the crowd. Not to restore safety. But to prevent her negativity from infecting the parade flow. The repositioning, public humiliation, disguised as logistics. 2 parade coordinators approached Meghan's security team. Urgent. Flustered. Tense. "We need to adjust her route. Quickly." Security immediately stiffened. "Why?" "The next float refuses to follow her. We need to move the order." Meghan overheard. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. Her jaw tightened. They weren't hiding the reason. They weren't sugarcoating it. Her presence was a liability. Her moment was toxic. Her section of the parade was now a problem to solve, not a highlight to showcase. And that humiliation? It simmered beneath Meghan's skin. Imagine the heartbreak. Walking into your hometown parade expecting applause. And the organizers reposition you like a hazard cone. Security tried to smooth things over. "It's for safety," one guard whispered. But Meghan wasn't fooled. This was rejection. In real time. In public. In front of cameras. And as the team subtly rerouted her, something even more painful happened. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People noticed the shift. People whispered. People smirked. "Look, they're moving her. They're hiding her. Even the parade doesn't want her." Humiliation layered on humiliation. But there was more, much more. Because as Meghan's team adjusted her pace, adjusted her path, and tried desperately to shield her from the chance, another voice rang out. A voice Meghan recognized instantly. This time not from Hollywood, not from a peer, not from a former acquaintance, from someone much closer. Someone whose involvement turned the entire situation from embarrassing into explosive. What if the person whose voice cut through the chaos wasn't an enemy, wasn't a critic, wasn't a stranger, but someone Meghan trusted? Not someone in the crowd, not a random heckler, not even a celebrity. It was someone on her team. Someone who was supposed to support her, someone who was supposed to protect her. And their voice, their tone, their words, in the middle of the booing, the chanting, the surging crowd, pushed Meghan into making the biggest mistake of the night. A mistake that turned humiliation into spectacle, embarrassment into meltdown, crowd negativity into viral wildfire. So what did this person say? Something sharp, something tense, something filled with the frustration her team had been trying to hide for weeks. Meghan, you have to do something. Don't just stand there. These words, snapped through clenched teeth by her own senior aide, hit Meghan harder than any boo or chant could. Because now the message wasn't escape, or stay calm, or keep moving. It was, you're losing control. Fix it. Now. And Meghan Markle does not respond well to panic, especially when it comes from her own inner circle. Her instinct, always, is to reclaim control of the narrative, to take action, to shift the tone, to win back the room. And so she made the decision that would define the next 5 minutes of the parade. She tried to charm the crowd. In the middle of chanting, in the middle of hostility, in the middle of chaos, she decided to fight the negativity head-on. And that's when the night went from disastrous to catastrophic. The moment Meghan decides to take control. Meghan's face changed the instant she heard her aide. The fear in her eyes,